Discover the amazing response after she accidentally sent an unexpected text to a billionaire CEO. Sarah dashed across her small kitchen, balancing a bowl of pasta in one hand and Lily's stuffed bunny in the other as the timer beeped. With her heart full of dreams and a dash of desperation, she settled down to share her aspirations with her best friend, Sarah. But as she typed, her finger slipped. "I just want a chance to prove that education can change lives," she wrote. Hit send. Hairpin twist of destiny. She accidentally sent the text to 5555VE1123, a number she thought was her own. Moments later, her phone buzzed. "That's a beautiful thought, Sarah. Let's talk." The reply was from Blake Thompson, the elusive billionaire whose shadow loomed over her quaint town like a storm cloud. The absurdity of it tickled her nerves. Was this real? As laughter bubbled up, anxiety followed, biting at her. Should she engage with someone so removed from her world? But that voice, the one she had silenced for so long, urged her to respond. As their texts became longer, a connection formed. To Blake, she was a beacon of authenticity in a sea of pretense. To Sarah, he was a figure out of reach, but with a warm voice that made her feel seen. Yet with each exchange, waves of guilt washed over her. Could she really mix her ordinary hard-fought life with his gilded existence? She wrestled against the notion of desiring more while protecting her daughter and the simple values they cherished. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The deeper she got into their conversations, the louder her internal struggles echoed. How could she welcome ambition when the very fabric of her town was fraying under corporate greed? Thoughts of her students' futures lingered like smog. A vital park project, a lifeline for Lily and the community, was threatened by Blake's corporation. Could she betray her growing affection for him to protect her home? The dichotomy knotted her stomach. Wanting to secure her position, to elevate her career and set an example for Lily, seemed almost selfish. But was she willing to turn away from the community and values she cherished? The thought of losing their gathering space, a chunk of her heart, clawed at her. She pictured Lily playing in that park, laughing, and felt the weight of her decision. As the dread coiled tighter within her, the looming community meeting approached like a freight train. She would have to face Blake, this man who embodied everything she questioned, discussing plans that could tear apart the very soul of her town. Would she stay silent and play nice or stand her ground, risking the budding connection? The tension swelled inside her, and she found herself at the epicenter of an emotional cyclone. With the meeting on the horizon, Sarah prepared for battle, the stakes higher than ever. Would she choose her community values, risking everything she had built, or would she let ambition and her budding relationship sway her? Doubt filled her like ink in water, spreading and clouding her thoughts. The moment of truth loomed, and with it, a decision that threatened to alter the course of not just her life, but Lily's future as well. What would she choose? Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the reflection in her small vintage mirror. The vibrant painting of the park hung behind her, a reminder of the very bastion she fought for. The weight of her choices pressed heavily on her chest. The flutter of her heart echoed against the walls painted in soft pastels, a contrast to the storm brewing inside her. She wanted to scream, to throw her ambitions out the window and let the fresh air cleanse her doubts. Yet, the pull of the unknown, of what might lie on the other side of her decision, held her captive. Her phone buzzed, breaking the spell of her introspection. It was a message from Blake. "Looking forward to our meeting later, Sarah. I think we can build something great together." Words that sparked both excitement and dread. How could she accept an opportunity that might mean the demise of her community? She hesitated. Clenching her hand into a fist, she felt the pulse of her determination rise against all that felt wrong. Determined to confront her fears head-on, she began to formulate her thoughts. What would she say in the meeting? Contradictory impulses twisted in her gut, drawing her in multiple directions. She envisioned her students, filled with potential and bright dreams, their futures tied to the very park that Blake's corporation threatened with construction. Would her ambition shatter the fragile hopes they held? With each imagined scenario, she developed a mantra in her heart: protect what matters. Time slipped away as she organized her notes. Passionate arguments against the project paired with data showcasing its social importance flowed onto the pages. The prospect of defending her community felt empowering. Suddenly, she wasn't just a mother, she was a voice, a presence. Maybe Blake, with all his influence, would respect her tenacity. As the clock drew closer to the meeting, her resolve solidified. But beneath that resolve lay a flicker of something else. Vulnerability. She didn't want to be dismissed as just another opposition. She wanted to be seen as an equal. Something that clawed at her. How could she forge connections, even amidst division? Arriving at the meeting venue, an imposing building that exuded power, Sarah felt small against its shadows. Yet she took a deep breath, reminding herself of her purpose. She was there for Lily, for the children. Stepping inside, the conference room buzzed with corporate chatter, a stark contrast to the life outside. The table was laden with glossy presentations and eager executives. Blake's presence, though striking, felt like doubting thunder, an uncertainty coiling around her instincts. Then their eyes met. For a heartbeat, she felt seen, understood. But beneath the warmth of his gaze lay an unspoken tension, a reminder of the complexities that lay ahead. Could he appreciate the weight of her ambitions, yet still advocate for the lives affected? The thought left her queasy. As they exchanged pleasantries, she conjured the strength that had propelled her here. When it was time to speak, Sarah cleared her throat, her palms clammy but her heart aflame with conviction. She was ready to confront, ready to articulate the very spirit of their community that seemed at risk. The moment was here, not just to challenge Blake, but to discover what her own ambitions truly meant. Just as she gathered her resolve to speak, a flood of unexpected revelations hit her. Thoughts of how a union with Blake might mean rethinking their values. Before she could voice her arguments, he leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Sarah, let's discuss the potential we can unlock together." Her breath caught. This wasn't just a battle, it was a crossroads. Would she forge a path beside him or cling to her foundations? With a firm resolve, she realized the journey they began now meant more than she ever understood. She was ready to confront not only him, but the very essence of her dreams. What road would she take, one of ambition at a cost, or the steady path of values unwavering? The weight of the decision loomed, charged with every heartbeat of uncertainty. Sarah's heart raced as she absorbed his words. The room felt charged, each breath she took thick with the weight of possibility. They were no longer simply at odds. They were standing at the precipice of something larger. Blake's proposition danced tantalizingly in front of her, tempting her to consider all her dreams and the glittering future he painted. Yet the more she contemplated it, the more she felt herself retract, retreating into the familiarity of her convictions. "Together," she echoed, her voice shaking slightly. She could see the predatory glint in Blake's eyes, a confidence she once found captivating but now felt ominous. "But what does that mean for the park? The community?" Blake was quick to respond. "We could elevate it. Imagine developing a space that not only preserves the park, but enhances it with features that could attract families and visitors alike." He leaned back, a casual dismissal of her concerns underlying his charm, but it was that very nonchalance that rubbed against her ragged edges. What cost was he proposing in exchange for development? The visions of children laughing, running free across that park filled her mind. Could its essence withstand the kind of development he envisioned? Or, like so many others, would it be replaced by sterile attractions flanked by corporate logos? Enhance? She struggled to frame the words properly, pushing down the rising surge of her emotions. This park isn't merely a space, it represents a sanctuary. Just adding playgrounds doesn't make it more of a community. Her voice quivered, though a fierceness ignited within her. Blake's expression shifted slightly. An unreadable flicker passed through his eyes. For a moment it felt like their battle had formed a bridge rather than a chasm. But just as quickly, the cold facade returned. "I believe our vision must evolve with the times, Sarah. Stagnation doesn't nurture growth." His argument related to the harsh realities she had long fought against, a notion she often encountered in debates. There was danger there, a thinly veiled pressure to conform. "Right," she pressed on, trying to steady the tide of uncertainty washing over her. "But at what price does that growth come? Would it shatter the fabric of the community that thrives here? The beauty lies within what we currently have." The contrast of their viewpoints hung heavily in the air. It became painfully clear to her. This meeting was less about collaboration and more about dominance. She was acutely aware, in this moment, that her voice wasn't just for recognition. It was a stand against the impermanence that developers like Blake seemed to embrace. As she continued to argue her case, a strategy began to unfurl before her like a roadmap. What if there was a way to intersect both their aspirations without losing the people's pulse that resonated in the air? She felt her confidence grow amidst the tension, fueled by a burgeoning resolve. "Let's not decide today," she finally said, her voice growing more resolute. "I suggest we explore potential solutions that allow the park to flourish while meeting your company's objectives as well." Blake scrutinized her, surprise etched into his features. His posture shifted. He seemed less the titan ready to crush her ambitions. "You think we can find a middle ground?" "Possible, yes," she replied, meeting his gaze with determination. "But only if you're willing to listen, not as an opponent, but as an ally." He nodded slowly, the tension crackling between them starting to evolve, but Sarah could still see the gears turning in his mind, the calculations weighing community against profit. The conversation was opening a crack, yet a barrier remained. She realized that trust would not come easily. She would need to navigate this labyrinth strategically. As the meeting reached a tentative conclusion, Sarah couldn't shake the sense that she had ignited a fuse, one that could either burn down her ideals or set fire to new opportunities. With every step away, the weight of their exchange lingered, drawing her into a deeper internal battle about negotiation without compromise. What if forging that partnership meant she'd uncover unexpected revelations about her own tenacity? Would she emerge stronger, or would she risk losing herself in this new game? Determined to find clarity amidst chaos, she stepped out into the crisp air, ready to explore where this unexpected collaboration with Blake might lead. Could it evolve into something transformative, or perhaps forge a new path she never anticipated? The stakes were higher than ever, and with each footfall, a new chapter awaited her. Sarah stood at the threshold of her apartment, fatigue wrapping around her shoulders like a heavy shawl. The lingering energy from her meeting with Blake coursed through her veins, each thought ricocheting off the walls of her mind. She knew she needed to re-establish her priorities, the vision of the park now intertwined with her growing professional dilemma. She had stepped into unknown territory, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her like a coiled spring ready to snap. With a sigh, she made her way to her small kitchen, seeking solace in the familiar ritual of making a cup of tea. As the kettle began to whistle, she reflected on what had unfolded. The veiled tension of negotiation with Blake had been a test, one that forced her to confront her convictions in a way she had never imagined. Digging through her notebook for her list of goals, she paused at the quote she scribbled months earlier. "Growth often requires a dialogue with discomfort." It felt prophetic now. Growth was precisely what lay ahead, but at what expense? She had spent years nurturing her identity as a protector of the community's needs, but here she was, flirting with the complexities of compromise. Once seated at her worn dining table, steaming mug in hand, Sarah allowed her mind to wander. The seams of her life were beginning to fray, a mix of fear and exhilaration battling within her. She thought of Blake's determination, the fervor behind his ambitions. "Could I embody a similar drive?" she mumbled to herself, the words reverberating off the walls. Suddenly, another facet of Blake's character surfaced, the confidence she had once admired. What if she could channel that same assertive energy, using it to sculpt her ideals into something more palpable? Sarah recalled how Blake had listened when she challenged his vision, albeit begrudgingly. Perhaps it wasn't about defeating him in this negotiation, but rather about learning to wield her own voice with authority. Could the tension between them translate into synergy? The question felt tantalizingly out of reach, yet too significant to dismiss. A shift in perspective began to form in her mind, moving like a ripple in water. What if her steadfastness could be her greatest asset? She resolved she would not merely survive this partnership with Blake, she would use it as an opportunity to flourish. To do that, she would need to prepare a strategy, a way to coax him toward that middle ground she had suggested earlier. Pulling out her laptop, she opened a blank document and began typing. The Community Vision Proposal. Each word flowed with purpose, sculpting her thoughts into tangible plans. She would not sacrifice the park's essence. Rather, she would embed it within any collaborations with Blake. As sentences filled the page, her ideas crystallized. Perhaps introducing a community-driven aspect to his development plans could weaken his corporate edge. She could invite local stakeholders to voice their perspectives, creating a collaborative design that would blend community needs with the innovation Blake espoused. The merging of their distinct worlds, she believed, could yield something extraordinary. The sobering reality hit her suddenly. A multi-layered battle awaited her. The first step would involve convincing Blake to embrace her vision rather than steamrolling over it. The prospect felt daunting, yet invigorating. Would he resist including a group of neighbors in the planning discussions, perceiving it as a slight to his authority? Finished with the proposal draft, Sarah leaned back in her chair, a sense of satisfaction mixed with the angst of not knowing if Blake would embrace change as she envisioned. The fear of confrontation loomed, but beneath it stirred a fierce resolve to leverage her voice effectively. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her reverie. She glanced down to see a message from Blake. "Let's set up a time to meet again. I'm intrigued by your idea." Sarah's heart raced. It was an opportunity to advocate not only for the park, but also for herself. Could this be the moment her path forward crystallizes, or would it push her deeper into a world she was still struggling to navigate? Rising from the table, she felt both anticipation and trepidation. The complexities of their future interactions flooded her mind, each scenario spinning out distinctly. How to balance professionalism and personal integrity would challenge her at every turn. As she walked toward the window, looking out into the cityscape, she realized with a jolt that she was teetering on the cusp of a new realm, one that could reshape her identity irreversibly. What decisions lay ahead that would ultimately define her? The moment of truth appeared to be drawing closer. The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only challenge her ideals, but her very sense of self. Sarah whispered softly to the night, a question poised on her lips. "Will I be strong enough to fight for my vision?" The morning sun poured through the window, illuminating the room in a golden hue that felt both welcoming and probing. Sarah sipped her tea, replaying Blake's message in her mind, the words still electrifying her thoughts. Intrigued. That single word lingered like a challenge, urging her to step beyond the familiarity of her comfort zone. The stakes were higher now, and she felt the pressure mounting. Would she rise to meet it? She picked up her phone again, staring at the screen. A meeting with Blake was a momentous occasion, one that could either solidify her position or send her spiraling back into doubt. Her palms were damp as she texted back, suggesting a time and place, hoping her words encapsulated both confidence and clarity. The sweet taste of possibility tinged with the bitterness of anxiety. As the day unfolded, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to her proposal. Each detail felt crucial in mapping the terrain of a negotiation she had yet to encounter. She needed to practice. A quiet moment of reflection turned into an impromptu role-play. She would embody both herself and Blake. Standing in the living room, she paced as she imagined Blake's response to her proposal. "Community involvement isn't a hindrance, it's an enhancement," she said aloud, testing her tone as she pronounced each word with intention. "By including neighborhood voices, we can create a project that resonates and stands the test of time." She paused, contemplating Blake's likely counterarguments. Would he argue for economic efficiency over emotional engagement? Would his next rebuttal undermine her standing? She shifted her perspective again, picturing him as a partner rather than an adversary, allowing herself to take on the role of a collaborator. "This project can be both profitable and enriching. My vision isn't simply a concession, it's a strategy," she articulated, her voice steadying with each repetition. The weight on her shoulders lightened slightly. As she rehearsed, she found her confidence growing. Each phrase she practiced transformed her lingering uncertainty into a resolve. She began to see the negotiation not just as a combat of wills, but as an opportunity for mutual growth. The hours passed quickly, and Sarah finally steeled herself for the moment of truth. She arrived at their meeting spot ahead of time, the cafe bustling with the hum of morning customers. Finding a quiet corner table, she spread her notes in front of her, attempting to appear composed even as her heart raced. When Blake arrived, he radiated authority wearing an understated gray suit, an impeccable version of the confident executive she had met earlier. His presence commanded attention even as they exchanged pleasantries. The weight of his aura pressed down on her, mingling with her thoughts of the impending discussion. "Sarah," he said, taking a seat and leaning forward, that inquisitive look returning to his eyes. "I wanted to hear more about your idea." She could sense the stakes just raised. The moment had arrived for her to distill her vision into words that resonated, a crucible of intent and persuasion. Taking a deep breath, she launched into her proposal, weaving the importance of community connection while crafting a narrative that showcased the park's potential to enhance his plans. As she spoke, Blake listened intently, his brow knitting occasionally, reflecting his critical mind. She pressed on, driven by the desire to connect the dots between their contrasting visions, to demonstrate how they could merge for a richer outcome. Yet despite her conviction, the knot of uncertainty twisted tighter each time she glanced at his inscrutable expression. She finished, her heart thudding in her chest. Silence fell heavy around them, a moment that seemed to stretch indefinitely. Would he see her vision as a liability, or could he recognize the potential buried beneath her proposal? Blake finally broke the silence, leaning back in contemplation. "You know, Sarah, change is never easy, especially for someone like me used to getting things done a certain way," he began. But the word hung there in the air, thick with possibility. What would come next? Would it validate her efforts or send her spiraling back into self-doubt? As anticipation pulsed in the space between them, Sarah realized that not only was she fighting for the park, but she was also contending with her newfound sense of self, a trajectory she had started to outline, but had yet to fully embrace. Would she finally find the voice she craved, or would this moment lead her back to the shadows she sought to escape? Is this the breakthrough I've been seeking, or merely a stepping stone? She pondered silently, bracing herself for the answer. But, Blake continued, stopping Sarah's heart for just a moment. He leaned forward, his expression a mix of curiosity and calculation. It also depends on how compellingly you can present this to the stakeholders. Can we find a middle ground? A rush of relief washed over her, but she understood this wasn't the time to celebrate. Middle ground meant negotiation, and with Blake's reputation, it wouldn't be easy. The inner voice that had long urged her to succumb to doubt now screamed for her to seize the opportunity. Gathering her thoughts, she responded, "Absolutely. I envision a phased approach that begins with community input on the design, followed by a clear plan outlining the financial benefits you seek." Her voice carried a newfound steadiness, a hint of urgency surfacing. Integrating their voices up front could reduce resistance later on. The park could become a flagship project, demonstrating your commitment to the community and drive future business. He nodded, studying her intently. The intensity of his gaze coaxed out details she hadn't considered, hidden layers of strategy to encase her ideals. Was she really qualified to navigate these waters? The self-doubt lingered, yet she found herself eager to push through it. What happens if we face opposition? Blake's question resonated deeply. It was a challenge designed to test her resolve. What then? A flicker of anxiety prickled her skin, but a strategic response surfaced. Every idea faces skepticism, especially those that challenge the status quo. I can prepare messaging that emphasizes transparency and the anticipated community benefits, engaging key stakeholders early on. Adrenaline swelled. She could feel possibilities bursting open within her. Interesting. He leaned back again, folding his arms as if appraising her proposal like a fine art piece. You're going to need to show that you can handle the heat. This isn't going to be cut and dry. Opportunities like this reveal layers of competition, both within and outside the company. Blake's words didn't puncture her confidence. They ignited it further. This was her chance to shine, to prove that her perspective could illuminate paths unseen by others. Then let's arrange a meeting with the board and present this as a dual strategy, a comprehensive plan that lets us both win, she suggested, her eyes daring to meet his. Bold, Blake said, his lips curving into a slight smile. But ambition has its costs. You must be prepared to defend your ideas. She could feel the weight of his expectations pressing in on her. This was no longer just about the park. It was about taking ownership of her vision. Could she really contend with industry veterans? Prepared but adaptable, she affirmed, aware that every hesitation she felt was a step she couldn't afford. I'll use data to back my proposal while encouraging an open dialogue. Flexibility could win us support. Now we're talking, he replied, the animosity waning in his demeanor. Send me the details and we'll see how to move forward. I'll be your ally, but I expect you to be ready for when the tides turn. She nodded, her heart racing anew. This was a precarious position, yet there was a promising thrill in standing face to face with the challenges of growth. For the first time, she was not just creating a project, she was crafting her legacy. As they wrapped up, Sarah's mind buzzed with what lay ahead. The tension had shifted to excitement, but with that excitement came a heaviness of expectation. Blake's emerging support felt fragile, a thin thread that could snap if she faltered. After parting ways, her thoughts raced. This was just the beginning, wasn't it? The thrill of possibility intertwined with the daunting realities of what might come. What would the board truly think? Would she falter when faced with scrutiny? Determined to embrace what lay ahead, she saw how the journey would challenge her more than ever before. reshaping her confidence as she fought for both the project and her own self-worth. Could the very conversation that sparked this new direction also ignite battles I'm unprepared for? She wondered, letting the thought settle as she walked away from the cafe, resolved to rewrite her narrative. But the true test awaited in the shadows of boardroom tables. Tomorrow would demand everything, but she was ready to face the moment she had long waited for, even if it meant stepping beyond her tamed apprehensions. What if her conviction was the spark to ignite the fires of transformation, and at what cost? The lingering question urged her onward, demanding clarity in the face of the impending storm. The next day dawned with a biting chill that seeped into Sarah's bones as she entered the glass towers of the corporate world, a stark contrast to the warmth of ambition that sparked within her. The looming presentation trembled in her mind, each step echoing the resolve she had found in her conversation with Blake. She was determined to turn doubt into strength, a transition she had only begun to understand. Settling into her small office, the familiar scent of brewed coffee flooded her senses, igniting memories of late nights spent refining her strategy. But today felt different. Today, her ideas mattered more than mere thoughts scribbled on a whiteboard. They could potentially reshape her career. She pulled up her presentation, the digital slides glistening with data and optimistic projections, yet a gnawing tension tightened her stomach. As the clock inched closer to the meeting time, Sarah rehearsed her pitch, her own reflection serving as both audience and critic. What if the board couldn't see her vision? What if her method for integrating community input fell flat? She could practically feel the weight of their expectations, the scrutiny mounting heavier by the minute. Calm, she whispered to herself. You're prepared. You're ready. With a sharp inhale, she reaffirmed her belief in the guiding principles of her strategy. It was about transparency, community, and the promise of mutual benefit. Could she really lead the charge against seasoned executives? Before she could further spiral into doubt, her phone buzzed with a notification, a message from Blake. Glancing down, her heart raced. Remember, stakeholders can be fickle, rationality is essential, but emotion drives action. Engage their hearts, not just their minds. His words sparked a revelation. She needed to humanize her approach. The numbers, the data, the projections, those were important, but it had been the emotional narrative that had drawn Blake's interest. They would need to feel invested. What had seemed like a monumental task suddenly transformed into a role she was eager to embrace. The boardroom was alive with hushed conversations and tapping fingers on laptops as she took her seat at the head of the long oak table. Her colleagues, industry veterans, watched her intently, some with skepticism, others with an expectant curiosity. At that moment, she understood that this was not just a career-defining meeting. It was a revelation about her ability to lead. As she launched into her presentation, her voice steady and piercing through the noise, Sarah felt a surge of confidence. She spoke not only of numbers and returns on investment, but of the heart of the project, the people it aimed to uplift. She painted visuals of community involvement, the joyful events, and the potential to sow seeds of future partnerships. Harry from finance raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Margaret from HR leaned forward, her skepticism softening into contemplation. Impressive, Blake remarked, joining the meeting midway as if he had been a silent observer, crucial for the turning point in her presentation. His presence bolstered her. She briefly met his eyes, finding a calm reassurance hidden behind his professional facade. But just as she was reaching the concluding points, a piercing question broke through her narrative. What if this project fails? What's your backup plan? It was Eric, the board member known for his cutthroat perspective. The room fell silent, every gaze landing on her, the weight of uncertainty tangible. Failure is always a possibility, she replied, biting back the swell of anxiety. But it's how we respond to that possibility that matters. An adaptive strategy means we can pivot if needed, involve the community even more, ensure we're listening, as much as we're leading. The room murmured softly, a mixture of surprise and respect on their faces. She had transformed fear into opportunity, revealing that leadership was not just about authority, but about connection, flexibility, and resilience. By the end of the meeting, a surprising wave of applause broke out. Sarah experienced a flood of emotions: disbelief, joy, relief. She was met with nods of agreement, and the once intimidating board seemed like allies. Had she really just achieved that? But as she walked out, exhilaration gave way to another reality. Facing the unknown had ignited something deeper within her, a newfound understanding of her leadership capacity, But what next? The question loomed. Could she sustain this momentum, face impending challenges, and turn this initial success into a foundation for future victories? With the echo of applause still ringing in her ears, she was determined to find out, knowing that next steps would unveil deeper tests of her commitment, her values, and ultimately, her purpose. The journey was just beginning, and she had no intention of stepping back. What would be the next hurdle that tested not only her skills, but also her very character? The following days following the presentation blurred together in an energetic haze. Sarah reveled in her newfound credibility, the satisfaction of her colleagues' approval fueling her ambition. Each morning brought a fresh wave of excitement, but beneath that gleam of success, an unsettling undercurrent stirred, urging her to recognize the fragility of her position. She found herself replaying Eric's question about failure in her mind. What if the board's initial enthusiasm faded? What if their trust in her dwindled at the first sight of adversity? Discomfort settled in the pit of her stomach. Success was intoxicating, but the underlying fear of collapse lingered. Her resolve had barely begun to solidify, and the looming prospect of future stakes weighed heavily on her. Blake's mentoring loomed large in her thoughts, the subtle nudges and strategic advice becoming her guiding light. One night, engrossed in her work, a brief moment of distraction pulled her away from the screen. She glanced at her phone. A fresh message from Blake glowed on the corner. Commitment and authenticity matter. Stay the course. Engage more and worry less. His words felt like a balm, soothing the turbulence brewing inside her. Deep down, she realized it wasn't just about making her ideas heard. It was about creating pathways for genuine human connections. She had to solidify her presence in the company. Words of encouragement flared a profound determination within her. The next meeting loomed, discussions centered around engaging their client base more effectively, a direct extension of her recent initiative. As the team dove into strategic planning, the pressure to step up was palpable. Ideas were exchanged, each one heavier with its repercussions, and Sarah sensed the need to assert herself further. Let's not just listen to our clients, let's involve them in every step of the process, she proposed. We can create advisory panels, soliciting direct feedback on our projects. They responded with varied expressions of doubt and curiosity. Could this be too ambitious? But Sarah felt a fire igniting in her chest. The comfort of a supportive cheerleader replaced the prior uncertainties. She was not merely pitching, but sculpting a vision that transcended numbers. As discussions progressed, Sarah recognized her unease morphing into anticipation. It wasn't just the thrill of recognition driving her forward. It was the distinct duty she felt to uphold her ideals of transparency. Each proposal she made reinforced her sense of purpose, blending her vision seamlessly with the company's core mission. But the pressure mounted. Success breeds expectations. Accusations of overextending herself bubbled beneath the surface of the discussions. The more she committed to the idea of deepening engagement with clients, the more the tide of skepticism surged. Eric's voice floated into her thoughts again, the accusation of naivety echoing ominously. Be realistic, Sarah. We have a brand to uphold. While others leaned back in their chairs, apprehensive, her fists clenched tightly in her lap. Was being ambitious a fool's errand? Each challenge seemed like a validation of her limitations. The weight of judgment seeped into her mind, urging her to retreat or fortify herself against the impending ramifications. That evening, grappling with her resolve, Sarah found herself grappling not just with the prospect of failure, but with her identity as a leader. Did she have what it took to refute the doubts lodged in her colleagues' minds and step into boldness while staying true to herself? Amidst the internal chaos, she sat down at her desk, head buzzing with thoughts, until her phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from a social media platform. As she opened the app, she stumbled across a post from a billionaire CEO, someone influential and well-respected in her industry. Caught off guard by the sheer coincidence, it felt almost serendipitous. What if her next step involved more than merely navigating her company landscape? What if there was a way to connect her ambitious vision and her leadership aspirations directly with the minds of those who could make waves across the industry? But what would be the consequences? The thrill of possibility collided with anxiety as her fingers hovered over her phone's keyboard, contemplating a message. Perhaps reaching out to the CEO could redefine her trajectory, yet immediately questioning her motivations, Sarah hesitated. What if this leap shattered everything she had built so far? But she couldn't afford to stall. Staring at her screen, she felt time slipping away. Was she ready to risk the familiar for what lay ahead? In that moment of indecision, she sensed the weight of her future resting precariously on the edge of her next choice. Would she summon the courage to reach for something extraordinary, or step back into her comfort zone? The choice was hers alone to make, and the stakes just got personal. Sarah was consumed by a swirl of thoughts, her heart racing in tandem with her rapidly waning confidence as she reopened the messaging app. The blinking cursor on her screen mocked her with its relentless inaction. An impulsive decision seemed both exhilarating and terrifying. A message to the CEO, hinting at her ambitious ideas, could thrust her into the limelight or crash down in an embarrassing heap. Clenching her fists, she forced herself to breathe deeply. She recalled the relentless expectations swirling around her, the weight of skepticism echoing in her mind. Did she dare to amplify her ambitions, or would she allow the fear of judgment to snuff out her flame? Deciding that retreat was not an option, she began typing, her fingers flying across the screen. Hello, CEO's name. I've been following your insights on client engagement, and I believe our approach mirrors your vision. I would love to share ideas on how client involvement can redefine our industry. No, it wasn't poetry, but it was authentic. Each word was a testament to the resolve blossoming within her. But before she could second-guess herself, she hit send, her heart racing as she watched the message shoot into the void. Immediately after pressing send, Sarah leaned back in her chair, a mix of skepticism and exhilaration washing over her. What had she done? Had she just cemented her status as an ambitious leader, or made herself a target for humiliation? Hope flickered within her, urging her thoughts to envision the possibilities that lay ahead. Days ticked by like a slow-moving conveyor belt, each moment threaded with equal parts anticipation and dread. Waking up became a ritual marked by habitual checks of her phone. The lingering anxiety that she'd made a grievous mistake stuck to her like a shadow, but beneath it steamed a growing resolve. This risk, though terrifying, felt necessary for her personal evolution. When the response finally came, it was brief, yet incredibly potent. I appreciate your initiative, Sarah. Let's discuss this further. How does Thursday at 10 a.m. work for you? The message sent shockwaves of both euphoria and terror through her body. This call could either be the making of her, or expose her deep-seated insecurities for all to see. The next couple of days were a whirlwind of preparation. All the confidence she had gained from her presentation began to wane as the reality of her opportunity sank in. She felt stripped bare as the approaches she had so eagerly championed not only had to stand up in front of her colleagues, but now before an industry icon. Every conversation in her head spiraled back to Eric's disapproving tone, mocking her ambitions with the cold reminder, be realistic. Still, she fought back against the rising tide of doubt. Review, adjust, repeat. Her new mantra began to take shape. She sat at her desk, flipping through notes, and started to formulate a presentation outlining her vision for client engagement and its implications for both the company and the industry. Planning allowed her some semblance of control amidst the uncertainty, but doubts kept crowding in. What if I stumble over my words? What if the CEO sees right through me? Thursday arrived, and with it, an electric charge ran through her. As she entered the conference room where the call would take place, the pressure mounted. The sleek design of the room felt suffocating, the polished glass reflecting her anxious expression back at her. When the call connected, she barely registered the CEO's face appearing on the screen, his presence commanding and reassuring all at once. "Sarah, it's great to meet you," he said. How could someone so influential emanate such warmth? There was no time for pleasantries. This was a moment she had fought hard to reach. "I'm thrilled to share my ideas on integrating clients into our processes," she began, and as she spoke, her voice grew steadier. Each word poured from her not just a reflection of her ambition, but a testament to her growing competence. Yet, as she navigated the conversation, she caught a glint of skepticism in the CEO's eyes. Was he challenging her idea, or merely probing her depth of conviction? "Are you prepared for potential backlash from your colleagues?" he asked, sharpening the edge of his inquiry. Every muscle in Sarah's body tensed. This was not just about the idea. It was a demand for authenticity, a challenge not just to her business acumen, but also to her courage. The weight of his question was palpable, and for a brief moment, the world around her faded away, leaving only her battling thoughts. Sarah took a breath, the response welling up from within. "Yes, but pursuing genuine engagement with our clients is worth it. I'm prepared to stand by it." Could she really confront the doubts of her colleagues when challenged by someone of such stature? The tension hung in the air, a moment suspended, as she awaited the CEO's reaction to her unwavering conviction. Would this be the decisive moment that changed everything? both for her and her vision? The stakes had never felt higher, and now it was time to discover if she could uphold her promise to herself. The next course of action loomed ahead, awaiting her bold response. The momentum of Sarah's journey had reached a crucial turning point, and she felt the stirrings of purpose surging through her. As the call continued, the CEO listened intently, his eyes filled with a mix of admiration and curiosity. She had ignited a spark, not just within herself but within him as well. "Yes, I understand that backlash is a possibility, but I believe in the beauty that stems from community involvement," she articulated, drawing on the urgency of her vision. "It fosters trust and innovation, leading to sustainable growth for our projects. Businesses can draw strength from their communities instead of merely exploiting them." The conviction in her voice was palpable, fueled by the thoughts of the children playing in the park, the community gatherings, and the laughter that once filled spaces now held in the balance. Each moment, each word became a declaration of her resilience. The CEO nodded slowly, clearly considering her assertion. "I appreciate that perspective, Sarah. But how will you address potential conflicts when they arise?" His questions now felt less like a confrontation and more like a challenge to refine her ideas. Taking a deep breath, she responded thoughtfully. "It's about transparency. I propose creating an open forum for feedback during the entire process. By including clients in discussions from the start, we ensure their needs shape our services. It's not just about being reactive, it's about being proactive." As she articulated her plan, her nervous energy transformed into excitement. The interaction was no longer just a monologue, it was a dialogue, a partnership in exploration. They went on to discuss frameworks and strategies, with each exchange solidifying her confidence. By the end of the call, something incredible shifted. Sarah had not only shared her vision, she had proven her commitment, demonstrating the foundational qualities of leadership. "Sarah, I see potential in your ideas. Let's explore this further with our team." His tone was serious yet inviting, a clear acknowledgement of her insights. The call ended, and Sarah sunk back in her chair, her breaths quick and shallow as realization dawned. She had navigated the uncertainty, held firm against waves of skepticism, and emerged on the other side not merely unscathed, but empowered. She realized that this was not just recognition from the CEO, it was a validation of her voice and her values. It all bore significance in the grand tapestry of her dream. With an invigorating rush, she drew a deep breath and felt the residue of her apprehensions dissolve. As the next steps materialized, she understood her role had shifted from being just a protector of the park to a visionary leader capable of harmonizing community aspirations with corporate agendas. Days later, Sarah walked into the office filled with a sense of purpose. She was met with the expectant faces of her colleagues, whose earlier doubt transformed into inquiries about the next phases of their evolving strategy. She realized this was the moment to advocate for both her vision and her community. Standing before them, she felt empowered, no longer hesitant. "It's time we embrace the idea of transformation. Our clients are not just numbers, they can be our greatest allies. I want to share the vision I've been developing." As she wove her narrative, their skepticism began to fade, replaced by interest. They engaged, asked questions, and shared ideas, building a bridge between their fears and her resolve. Through every conversation and meeting hastened by her influence, Sarah garnered support, allowing herself to see the strength in her collaboration with Blake, who had redefined his role from adversary to partner in progress. Weeks passed, and as Sarah watched the arrangements come to fruition, she knew she had pushed through the struggles within her. Not only had she influenced an entire direction for the company, but she had woven a robust connection to her community that enriched their landscape. With every new person who joined the conversation about the park's renovation, and with every interaction that brought their residents into the fold, Sarah's heart swelled with fulfillment. She stood on solid ground, established as a confident and competent leader. In that exhilarating moment, she vividly recalled the doubts she once harbored. How could ambition coalesce with community values? The answer was becoming clear. Unveiling the revised plans at the community gathering was the final piece. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. The people embraced the partnership as an opportunity rather than a threat. She felt praise echoing through the crowd, her daughter's delighted laughter ringing in her ears. Each smile was a testament to her growth, not just as a professional navigating the corporate landscape, but as a vigilant champion for her community's spirit. Sarah's heart soared. She had demonstrated tenacity, compassion, and strategic foresight to weave a narrative where ambition did not overshadow authenticity. Standing there, before neighbors and her daughter, she embraced the victory of overhauling her identity, not as someone at odds with herself, but as an advocate for a united future. Sarah had successfully reconciled her ambitions with her foundation, not merely reaching individual achievement, but standing as a catalyst for greater change. In that accomplishment, she found lasting satisfaction and the clear affirmation of her capability to lead and inspire, the powerful awakening of her authentic self. As she took a deep breath amid the rapturous applause, she recognized the moment not as an ending, but as a beginning to an even larger journey, the one where her guiding light would shine brightly for those around her. Do you want to witness further extraordinary transformations and the power of personal ambition? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.